rich white people can get away with some messed up shit, and then people get sent away for something they didn't even do. So it's like that opened my eyes, like plea deals and just basically things that keep prisons populated for money. And
It's
yeah.
where, like, that's where I start to think of like the root of all these problems. It comes back to corporations and and corruption within our government, kind of, being swayed by these big corporations. Do you think that's kind of played a role in how it's kind of malformed our democracy? Because
Oh, absolutely.
everything's paid for by these massive, massive companies that have way more wealth than most of most of the population.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think, well, another thing they talk about in this documentary is the ALEC. I don't know if you've heard of it, American Legislature of the Executive Council. It's basically um, an elite where politicians, corporations, they're part of it. It's basically a lobbyist group. I think lobbying is absurd. I can't really see how it plays into um, what we see as like a country for the people. I think it allows a lot of what you're saying, corruption and kind of allowed corruption, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I totally think it has a huge part in where we are now in so many so many different ways.
What's interesting is, like, I took the history of journalism class. That's the major that I decided to go with. And
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. Like, I used to think that like this sort of onslaught that we see now of corporations buying politicians, it's been happening all of American history. It's not a new thing. You know,
Yeah,
it's been a problem for pretty much all of United States history. It's not new at
and
all.
it causes such a gap that, I mean, I hate when people say, "Oh, Jeff Bezos, he worked hard for that. He deserves that. Why shouldn't he keep his wealth?" And it's like, this guy has enough money to live lavish, luxurious lifetimes for 100 lifetimes. Like, the amount of money this guy has is unfathomable to you and me. And it's like, I understand
Here's
a capitalistic country, like why, like of course it provides incentive and whatnot, but after you make a certain amount of money, you can't go wrong. You put it somewhere and it makes more money.
Yeah, I read this article, and there was a group that calculated, it was like this big like research group. They calculated how much it would cost to end world hunger, and they came around about $10 billion or something around that number, maybe 20 billion. And over the course of 10 years, how much it would cost them. And it turned out to be less than that of Jeff Bezos' net worth. So he could essentially buy, his money could pay for to end world hunger.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, then you think about, like, that is like, his mindset must be so inhumane. It is like, people with that amount. And then it goes back to, why are people not like, the past few months, $1,200 for 4 months versus all these, like, corporations getting these huge huge amounts of money. Also, we don't know where that money is going. um so yeah, it's, i I struggle when people make the comment that they are opposed to government overreach, whereas, like,
See, I understand the argument where they say that Jeff Bezos earned his money, because he did. He earned his money. But
100%.
is anybody worth $150 billion?
Mm,
Anybody? Is even the president, you know,
yeah.
all criticism aside for like Trump or whatever, like, is the president of the United States worth $150 billion? You can't even argue. Like, that's even that is a little much. Like, I think there should be a tax above a certain amount. Say just to be modest, like 20 billion. $20 billion. Once when you have $20 billion, what do you need? You can afford anything, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's enough money where like if if the most, $20 billion can catch you anything. Anything over that, imagine if that's taxed at 100%, how much money goes back into everything else, literally everything else.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I would never I understand and appreciate and respect our country's capitalistic um view, and I also like ideas of like I don't think I don't think it's fair, our education system. I think that should be way more distributed. I there are a lot of poor communities. I don't think that should be a thing. I enjoy the incentive. I enjoy the idea that people can be like, "Oh, I was poor and now I'm rich because of what I've done."
Yeah.
But the way um just because of, again, the way taxes and legislature and whatnot has been built, it creates a gap that cannot be overcome by work and effort and motivation. And um, it's bothersome when some people do not see that.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Everything Under the Sun podcast. If you want to listen to the full podcast, you can go to Spotify, Apple Podcast, or anywhere else you get your podcast. To watch more segments from the show, you can follow our Instagram page, our Facebook page, or subscribe to our YouTube channel at Everything Under the Sun.